And I think this is what we mean when we talk about the peaceful revolution. The peaceful revolution is happening from within. This is only 100,000 people today that are adopting Bitcoin out of necessity. What happens in 10 years when it's a couple million people? What are governments going to do? How are they going to react? That is the power of this technology. Bitcoin gave everybody the right to private property. What are governments going to do? Bitcoin consciousness is going mainstream, right? We had the 60 Minutes episode, I wouldn't even call this mainstream anymore. I would call it legacy mainstream, better said, right? So we had, 60 Minutes did a segment on the Bitcoin beach, right? The famous, and this is NBC video, and it's essentially talking about how Cubans are adopting Bitcoin in the face of a dictatorship, and of course, right, the currency collapse, financial restrictions by the communist government of Cuba, and not to mention the, famous sanctions that have been imposed by the US government onto the Cuban people for many, many years, right? So anyways, I thought this was really interesting, and I'll get to why, but let's watch. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Let's watch like about a minute of it, and then we'll kind of riff on it a little bit.
It may look frozen in time, but Cuba is embracing the future. Its cryptocurrency market growing exponentially. An estimated 100,000 Cubans now use them, thanks largely to the rollout of mobile internet 3 years ago. Cafe owner Nelson Rodriguez now accepts payments in Bitcoin and Ethereum.
I like crypto because I believe in this philosophy.
So, as a first-timer, I'm hoping to pay for my meal.
Ethereum, send. Can I scan your QR code there?
Yep, I got 11.99. It's fine.
So you're 1 cent short,
Yeah.
and I got charged $5 more, but in the end we managed to...
Yeah.
Perfect. Pleasure doing business with you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Most Cubans can't use internationally accepted credit or debit cards because of US sanctions. PayPal, Revolut, and Zelle are likewise banned. No problemo, says this plucky entrepreneur.
See you later, we don't need you anymore.
Okay, so a couple things to break down there, right? So like I've always said, the Cuban people, and I live in Miami, so you're just in, and Leron knows this as well. You're just surrounded by this culture. You understand it very well. And, me being, I wouldn't say I'm, I grew up in Miami, right? But, originally I'm also kind of from a Caribbean country as well, Venezuela, right? Sort of close to Cuba, a lot of things in common. But the point is, and the thing that I wanted to pay attention, the things that I want you guys to pay attention to is even with the US government and the Cuban government. Mind you, the Cuban government, they have two separate dollars over there. They have the foreign dollar, which is more it's more paired with the US dollar, and then there's the Cuban peso, which is kind of like a shit coin. And then every couple of years they exchange it, where they take away the US dollar paired with the US dollar, and if the government gets in trouble, and then they give you the shit coin, right? It's like a shit coin exchange, same as FDR did, right, when he made gold illegal, right? He exchanged people, he bought people's gold, and he gave them fiat shitcoin instead, right? So the point, the thing that I want you guys to focus on is if governments have the capacity to confiscate your wealth to keep themselves alive, they will. Bitcoin takes that power away from them, and only Bitcoin, because a lot of these other, including the stable coins, including the shitcoins, they might act like they're decentralized, but as we've covered many, many times on the show, like we covered yesterday, they only look like that. And eventually, if the government, goes to get their head, metaphorically, it's going to be a lot easier to compromise those networks, right? So that's the power of this. That's the power of this movement. Even in Cuba, a communist country, people have access to private property. And if you use the technology of multi-sig and all that stuff, and you geographically separate your seeds, violence doesn't have the same return than it used to for governments, right? And I think this is what we mean when we talk about the peaceful revolution. The peaceful revolution is happening from within. This is only 100,000 people today that are adopting Bitcoin out of necessity. What happens in 10 years when it's a couple million people? What are governments going to do? How are they going to react? That is the power of this technology. Bitcoin gave everybody the right to private property, even if you live in a dictatorship like Cuba. Absolutely surreal. Anyways, Phil, what are your thoughts on that? That video made me so happy, man.
That video definitely...
They have no power anymore.
That was great.
I'm Hispanic. I could do that, by the way. We can make fun of ourselves.
We can make fun of ourselves. You kidding me? No, but look, I thought what I thought was hilarious, right? And it kind of got me thinking. So you know how they mentioned that they're accepting Bitcoin and Ethereum payments? I wonder if they tried to push through any Ethereum payments on Saturday or Sunday. I wonder if somebody had to pay over $3,000 for a cup of coffee for the gas fees. And the reason why I say this is because you'll notice that you never hear anything out of the general public talking about paying exuberant gas fees for a product that they purchased or a service that they purchased out in the real world. The only time you hear these people complaining is when their stupid NFTs, the NFT mints went wrong or they got rug pulled or something. That kind of tells me that there's most likely zero adoption for Ethereum. And don't get me wrong, again, it makes no difference what I think because the market is what's going to determine what is real and what is not, what is true and what is not. And at the end of the day, we're all going to find out that nobody's actually using Ethereum except for a bunch of speculators in a circus. So yeah, love that Bitcoin's being used. Don't care that Ethereum's being used over there. I don't actually think it is because I think if it was, we would have heard something about the gas fees. That's my take.
Absolutely. Liron, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I think he said in the video, because they said something about him paying in Ethereum. Didn't he say that he was paying $5 extra? I think that was the fee that he was paying. I'm pretty sure. And that wouldn't have been the case if it was using Lightning Network or even on-chain Bitcoin. But, but like you said, as far as Ethereum goes, it's all speculation. They're only willing to pay thousands of dollars because they think they're going to get rich off of that little transaction. But it's beautiful to see countries that are oppressed actually using this technology in the way that it was intended to be used to circumvent, governments and things like that are trying to control the people and control the money and control it in a way that harms them. So they're able to, circumvent that and get their money for their coffee. It's great. It's great to see that.
And it's interesting that you use that word. It's not even a purposeful, like circumvent sounds like a malicious word, as if you're trying to fuck them. I wouldn't even say it. It's just they're obsolete, right? Like you don't have to go through a third party anymore. And because of that, it makes them obsolete. They might see it like circumvention, especially the central planners in government. But I think the individual, especially in Cuba, and I've always said this, guys, that the revolution is not going to happen in countries that most benefit from the legacy financial system. They're going to hold on to the last second. But countries that least benefit from the financial system, like Cuba, like the Central African Republic, like El Salvador, like Panama, they're going to be like, yeah, fuck that shit. Let's adopt Bitcoin, right? And that's exactly what you're seeing play out. It's absolutely fascinating. Shout out to the Cubans. Bullish.